Hello, it's the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red podcast. I'm Matt Addison with Theo Squires, Sean Bradbury and Tom Cavilla all with me. All four of us in all four different corners of Echo Towers for you today. We're going to have a quick chat about the Inter game midweek in the Champions League, and then we'll have a look ahead to Brighton, which takes place on Saturday lunchtime. Theo, I'll come to you first. We're not going to spend that long on Inter Milan. Liverpool got beat. It didn't particularly matter in the end. Were the Reds below par, do you think, on the night, or was it just a case of they knew what they had to do and they kind of just got a result that suited them?
Probably a bit of both, really. I'm struggling to remember this game. You sort of rare Liverpool defeat, you already erase it from your memory, don't you? I think with away goals taken out of European competition, Liverpool just went into it defending a 2-0 lead. Like, they knew it was very unlikely that Inter would get 3 goals at Anfield to turn it around. Like, if they had been properly threatening to get a second, Anfield would have responded. There would have been that roar. But Liverpool weren't at the best. They looked a little bit tired in times. Players weren't 100%, but they still could have won. They still created a number of chances. You think Matip hit the woodwork, Salah hit the woodwork twice. It's almost a sign of a good team, isn't it? Like, you're creating those chances and you could have easily won 2-3-1 without playing well. Yeah, didn't take those chances on the day. But if there's a game to not take your chances and lose, it's one like this where it matters nothing at all. Get the loss out the way. It's the first home defeat in a year, just about, I think, since Fulham. I think we'd only just had the anniversary on that week before the Inter game.
Year and a day, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's just over a year. That's an incredible record when you consider where they were a year and a day ago, when it felt like they were going to be losing every single time they went to Anfield without the fans there. They knew what they had to do. They weren't at their best. And maybe tiredness is creeping in a little bit, having had such an intense fixture period, having had the League Cup final. But the body's there to rotate. There's an international break on the horizon. Not really any concerns there. As I said, just get the loss out of the way in a game that doesn't matter. And as Mohamed Salah said in his post-match interview, he didn't score against Inter. Maybe he'll score 3 in the next game.
Yeah, I think it was Peter Kravitz, I think, that Jurgen Klopp said there are certain games that you can afford to lose, and if you're a good team, you pick the right ones. And I think Liverpool certainly did that, Sean. In terms of the actual game itself, I wanted to ask you about the red card. Were Liverpool a bit lucky that Alexis Sanchez was a bit daft, or was it just a case of they did what they needed to do, and maybe that didn't make as much of a difference as some people might think?
I think the timing of it, in terms of when he got his second yellow, was maybe slightly fortuitous, because obviously it was ideal, wasn't it, coming after that goal and settling a few nerves. I thought from that point onwards, especially when LFC made the changes, they were pretty comfortable, really. But overall, I agree with what Theo said. I think it was interesting that Klopp, in the press conference just gone, was talking about the counter-pressing not being good enough, and there were elements of the game he was dissatisfied with. But then also he said the mood in the dressing room afterwards was a little bit downbeat, because obviously it was a defeat, which doesn't come around too often for Liverpool at the moment. But he said he himself was quite happy with it. And I think over the course of the tie, Liverpool were much the better team. There can be no doubt about that. And I think there was 2 factors for me that made me pretty happy with the outcome on the night, even though it was a defeat. Like, one was the physical approach. That Inter were robust. If we're being nice about it, at worst they were pretty grim at times in terms of how kind of hard they were going on Liverpool on occasions. And I think the ref was almost dangerously lenient at times, I thought, with them, especially in the first half. There were quite a few incidents where I thought he should have given a free kick at least, but that played into Inter's hands a little bit. And I do think Liverpool, we all often see them, the natural game plan is to squeeze other teams, isn't it, with the high line and everything we've seen about how successful Liverpool are and the way the team's made up. But this was a game where I felt, in midfield especially, they did just try and contain them for once. They weren't as committed to really pressing high up the pitch, and Inter did a bit of that, and you've got to give them a bit of credit for as much as I think elements of their game plan were slightly agricultural. They did play very well. But yeah, I think that the main thing was Liverpool were capable of seeing it out, made the right changes. Midfielders who came on, I thought, helped them settle into the game, and that's been a hallmark of Klopp in recent weeks, hasn't it? He's rotated his squad well, he's kept players happy, and he's made the right changes at the right time. So yeah, I was there, I was in the crowd, and there was a little bit of consternation, I think, in the second half. A few people around me were getting a bit nervy, but not just saying this with the benefit of hindsight, but genuinely didn't feel Liverpool were too troubled. Always felt like they had an extra gear to go up if they wanted to. But I think it was a very sensible second leg performance. And we were looking at this in the office the other day, Theo and myself, that I think if Liverpool's season keeps on going well, and there's no reason to believe it won't, there's a midweek game in virtually every single slot between now and the end of the season, if they keep winning in all competitions. So finding a game where you can, go at 75% rather than a full throttle 100% every now and then is pretty essential. And they did that and they still got through. So job done.
Yeah, job done indeed, Tom. I mean, they've had a couple of games now where they've maybe not been at the scintillating best. We've seen them play far better, but the crucial thing is they've got those two results that they needed in the end. I mean, I wanted to pick out Trent Alexander-Arnold, actually. I think he's been probably one of the better players, I should say, across the last couple of games. I mean, we don't particularly need a reminder of how good he is, but I think he's one in particular that has stood out to me recently.
Yeah, well, Trent is always, at least a 7 or 8 out of 10. Usually every time he plays, it's quite rare for him to have an off day, particularly this season. He's been, very good since the opening game of the season. And, you just sort of expect it, I think, each week from him and Robertson now. I know there was that brief period where Robertson earlier in the season, people suggested that he maybe had a drop off in form and, maybe to give Tsimikas a run on the side. But, with Trent, it's always been a case of he's been the first choice and he's never really had anyone, trying to push him for that spot. So, that's testament to Trent that Liverpool have, don't feel the need to necessarily have someone like for Trent because just of how good he is. He can, each time he plays, he's going to be delivering a world-class performance for the team. And like you said, the way he's been playing recently has been really impressive. The delivery of his crosses is always to a high standard, and he's just so creative in the final third of the pitch for Liverpool.
Yeah, with that being the case there, I'm sure it won't remain the case for much longer that Liverpool have kind of been struggling a little bit in terms of scoring goals. Obviously, been a couple of games now, they've only scored the one. It was an important one, obviously, to beat West Ham. But I think it's fair to say that the front three haven't quite been firing. Of course, we could be having a very different conversation if one or two of those chances that had hit the crossbar or hit the post potentially had gone in. But, I mean, it's no real concern yet, but you would expect that they'd want to turn that around as quickly as possible.
Was that one to me or Sean's new friend in the background there?
Yeah, that was definitely to you.
Yeah, I suppose they have looked a little bit tired, the front three, and it's not helped that Jota's had the ankle injury and he's come back. He just doesn't look right. Whether he rushed himself back for the final, we know ankle injuries can be a bit delicate. You can be fit to play and you're still not 100%. It doesn't feel right. And it's a hard one because he needs minutes and he needs game times to get back to full fitness, to get that freshness. But if he's not playing at 100%, you almost feel like you can't give him those starts to get the minutes. So I think the international break's coming at a good time for Liverpool to get that back. Imagine how we'd be feeling if they hadn't signed Luis Diaz now. If you think, well, they've just had Firmino out, Jota's not at his best. Yeah, you've got Minamino and Origi there, and they have scored goals when they've been turned to, but they traditionally only get turned to properly in the domestic cups, not in the games that matter that little bit more. Salah, he's probably maybe feeling the aftermath of the AFCON a little bit, that final defeat. Like, he's not been scoring goals as freely as he had been in the first half of the season. And that's not negative on him by any means, because the rate he was scoring goals the first half of the season was obscene. It would have been something special for him to keep that on for a whole campaign. And he's still scoring goals. He's got 4 in the past month, but he's now 3 without. And like I mentioned earlier, we said he didn't score against Inter. We hit the woodwork twice. He was getting in the right positions, creating chances. And he says he might score 3 in the next one. He has looked a little frustrated in recent games. I think he's maybe tried to do a little bit too much on his own, where he's found he's got 3 players against him and he'll try and wiggle through all of them, get into the box, and then his shot's blocked, and that's happened quite a few times. And then let's remember, though, it is a new look front three. Like, it's Sadio Mane adjusting to a new role, and he's doing well. He's scoring goals, playing this central role. Diaz, we know how well he's come into the side and he's linking up well. He's looked such like a Liverpool player for years, but it's still those teething problems that you expect. Then we're saying this when Liverpool are the highest scorers in the Premier League this year. They've scored over 100 goals altogether in this season, and it doesn't really look like it's slowing up. Like Inter Milan, it was a rare game where they didn't score. Even when they don't play well, they still score goals, as we saw against West Ham last week when they got his chance there. So it's not anything to really be concerned about. I think it's just this period of the season where Liverpool have had such an intense run. Tiredness is maybe creeping in a little bit. but they've got the bodies there to rotate. So it's just about getting through to March international break. You've got these 2 big games now against Brighton, where you can briefly narrow the gap on City, and then the game in hand where you hopefully properly narrow the gap against City when you play Arsenal. Then it's the FA Cup to keep the quadruple hopes alive, and then they can just recharge the batteries in the international break, go again. I don't think any of us are in real doubts that the front 3 will click and keep scoring goals. They've got the 3 top individual scorers in the Premier League as well, don't they? And Mane, Salah and Jota. You just need them to maybe start scoring a few more goals like they were earlier in the season. But this is the joy of what Liverpool have got, that we can say that Salah and Jota aren't scoring as many as they were a few months ago. But it's when Mane's picked up. When before AFCON, he was on this lengthy goal-scoring drought and there were slight concerns about him. They've got so many attacking options now, and they're high-quality attacking options, that it doesn't really need to be a concern. They will still find a way to score goals and win games. And it's a sign of a good team that you can get these narrow 1-0 victories or lose the right games. Who knows? They might win 6-0 tomorrow. They did against Leeds, didn't they? It's always this sort of game that's just around the corner for Liverpool to really click and fly into top gear.
Yeah, I've not got the numbers on this, but it does feel like Mohamed Salah has a decent record against Brighton. We'll move on to them now and preview that game, Sean. It's a game that Liverpool do have to definitely win. They've lost each of the last 4 games. Brighton only scored 1 goal in that time. It kind of feels to me like a decent time to be playing them.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's been a strange season for them because obviously the manager and the team have had a lot of plaudits, haven't they? But I was just looking at the span of their results, and they had a really good start to the season. I think they won 4 out of the first 5, but then they've racked up so many draws. I think they've got 12, which is joint highest in the division with a couple of other teams. But yeah, like you say, recently they've nosedived a bit. And we had a good piece this morning on the site from Rich, one of our recent recruits, and he's chatted to somebody who covers Brighton week in, week out. And it was interesting. They were just talking about how much the defence has been destabilised in recent weeks because I think Adam Webster has had an injury. He's been out. Dan Burn obviously went to Newcastle, and a bit of discussion around other players. Dunk, I think they were saying, has lost a bit of form. And it just made me think back to last season. You know, you lose key figures in defence, as Liverpool did, clearly, as every fan will know. And it just has a knock-on effect throughout the team, doesn't it? Your brighter attacking talents further forward are looking over their shoulder, the way you build out from the back, which is pretty key to Brighton. You know, they're a bold and adventurous team who are happy to do that. You know, if you've got different faces in there and the keeper's not used to them, it just kind of mixes it all up a little bit. And I think, like you say, looking back at the games they have lost recently, losing games at home to, I think, Burnley and Villa is not a great sign, is it? If teams who are a little bit up and down in form and towards the bottom half of the table are coming to your place and getting results, well, Liverpool's a different kettle of fish altogether, isn't it? So, yeah, I think there can be confidence for Liverpool tomorrow, and you're right, it's a pretty good time to play them. I suppose the one thing is that there's not a lot of pressure on Brighton apart from the kind of basic pressure of wanting to turn their form around. I mean, you know, they're kind of where they usually are, aren't they? And a few decent results between now and the end of the season, and I think they could still beat their best ever Premier League points tally. Or I'm pretty sure I read before that was only 41, and you know they're within striking distance of that. So wouldn't say there's altogether too much pressure on them. But yeah, the loss of form and the loss of players at the back is a big thing. And I think there's enough there for Liverpool to capitalise.
Yeah, whilst you were talking there, Sean, Theo's done the numbers. 5 goals, 5 assists it is for Mohamed Salah in 9 games against Brighton. So it is a decent record. It did match up with the eye test. Tom, in terms of Brighton, I mean, obviously we have to sort of mention the fact that Liverpool were 2-0 up against them in the reverse fixture, ended up dropping 2 points in that game. But is this a different Liverpool team to what it was then? Is this a different Brighton team as well? If that situation was to happen again this weekend, you probably wouldn't expect the same outcome.
Yeah, I think when that draw happened, it was sort of that period in the season where Liverpool was sort of dropping points after going in the lead. I think we had it against Brentford, a few other sides. It's sort of that October, November period where there seemed to be a bit of a problem of trying to see out games, and gradually over the season they have seemed to get better at that. Sort of grinding out results and picking up more points sort of over the Christmas period. So I think Liverpool, like you said, will go into this with full confidence. I don't think they'll be sort of dwelling on that draw they had against Brighton. I think that will just be quickly forgotten about on this occasion, because yeah, I don't think there's too much. Klopp will be looking into that. Obviously they will be wary of the quality Brighton have. As you guys sort of touched on, they are quite a progressive side, playing good football. Got some dangerous players, particularly sort of in defence on the Lamptey at wing back as well, can be a threat going forward. So I think Liverpool have got to be careful of them, obviously in that sense, but you'd expect them to come out on top on this occasion, I think.
Yeah, we heard from Jurgen Klopp a little bit earlier, didn't we, Theo? And he was kind of talking along similar lines, really, in terms of the quality of Brighton, the manager that they've got. I mean, he does tend to talk up opponents in advance of Liverpool playing them. But I get the impression with this one, it is a genuine kind of admiration for Graham Potter. I think the job he has done there is really impressive, and this will be a bit of a test for Liverpool, even if they're not in the best of form.
Yeah, he's a good manager, isn't he? Graham Potter. He's one who's maybe not had the most orthodox route to being a Premier League manager, but when you've seen his sides play, they do play good football, and he has impressed throughout his journey. He's the one who was like in Scandinavia, wasn't he? He caught the eye in Europe before getting the move over here to England. But yeah, it's one where Liverpool haven't got the best record against Brighton recently. Like they won at Anfield last year. They drew 1-1, didn't they, at their place? I think Jota scored in that one and still dropped points. And then it was the 2-2 draw that we've already touched on. And it's, I think, one where they haven't had their best days against them, and it has been since Potter's come in. Klopp has spoken about this before, that there is that slight concern there. And Liverpool have had an issue recently where they've not enjoyed the best of fortunes against sides that play 5 at the back. And as Tom just mentioned there, that's what Brighton do. They've got Lamptey at right wing back. They've got some good players. No, they lost Dan Burn in January, but they've still got some talented players there that can see the game out. But let's be honest, it's still Brighton, it's still Liverpool. Liverpool on their day are a match-ready one, and we're talking Man City's, Chelsea's, all these top sides in Europe. Brighton, at their very best, can go on a good cup run, maybe reach the semi-finals, and finish mid-table in the Premier League. They're not at a stage where they could be challenging for Europe just yet. They're bang on standards, and it's one where maybe Potter can take him to that next level of, in a few years, slightly pushing for Europe, because they don't have the biggest budget, they don't have the biggest name players, but they have got the signs there. Or he'll just get poached or end up at a bigger club. Like he's one where if Tottenham's latest appointment goes wrong, maybe they'll end up going for him. Or maybe Everton, that can be their next umpteenth manager. He's that sort of one, that next step up. And he's someone you wouldn't really be against maybe being a future Liverpool manager if he can make that journey, because he does play the right sort of football. But it's one where Liverpool, they should get it done, shouldn't they? It's Brighton. I know we can't take it for granted. Whenever we seem to take things for granted on this podcast is when the horrible games turn up and Liverpool aren't at their best. But the way they've been, even when they've looked tired, they have been getting the results from the majority in the last few weeks. And you think that should be enough against the Brighton team. It's very different circumstances to when they played them last year, when you think it was just on the eve of getting all the injury problems, when they'd already lost a couple of the centre-backs at their place. And then we all know how horrific it was at the start of 2021 with losing at home pretty much every single week. And the 2-2 draw, it was a weird game earlier in the season. I think Klopp said they weren't at their best then. They weren't deserving of a 2-0 lead. And it's understandable that they threw it away. But both sides are in a different place. Liverpool going for all these honours. They're going for the Premier League title race. You don't want to play this 12:30 kickoff on a Sunday after a Champions League game, but hopefully they can get into it because they need the points, they need the win, and they need to set down a marker to let City try and slip up again, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, just a couple more bits to go through from the press conference before we pick our teams for the game. One of those, Sean, was a bit of an update of sorts on Mohamed Salah's contract. We've since seen a little tweet from his agent as well. What do you make of the comments and the seeming reaction to those comments as well?
Yeah, interesting. To be honest, the more I thought about it and reread Klopp's comments out of the context of just listening to him in the presser, I think there's a bit of a quiet escalation of both positions today, really, because what Klopp said, albeit in quite a subtle way, I thought was quite hard line, because a lot of the noises from Salah and the Salah camp, if you like, so far have been that, the ball's in the club's court. It's on them to whatever it is that's being negotiated and whatever the sticking points are. They want movement on the club side, but Klopp quite defensively said it's Mo's decision pretty much. The club did what the club can do, which, contrast that to the tone he's taken in recent months and years with, let's say, Henderson and Milner, where you kind of feel he's actively pushing and thinks if something's in the balance, a word from him can maybe get it over the line and secure a contract for players he wants to stay at the club. I've got no doubt he wants Salah to stay, but it seems quite high stakes, and obviously the best outcome is that he stays, but there's always a context to that, isn't there? What is he asking for? Is it fair? Can Liverpool make an exception for him? Can they sell it to the rest of the squad? I mean, you'd like to think so because he's that good, but obviously that has a limit. And then, as you say, Matt, what came from his agent, which on the face of it was just a string of laughing emojis on Twitter for anyone who's not seen it, which, of course, he may claim refers to absolutely anything. He could have been sat there watching a video on YouTube and just chuckling away to something he found amusing, but that it came so hot on the heels of what Klopp said in the press conference doesn't seem to me like much of a coincidence. And that really doesn't cast him in a great light, I don't think, trying to laugh off what Klopp said. And, obviously Klopp is in a difficult position in all this. No doubt he wants the player to stay, but he's a representative of the club as well. And maybe to some extent he's got to see it from their perspective. No doubt he'll have been, if not directly involved in negotiations, he'll be clued up on how they're progressing, won't he? So, it's difficult for him. But I don't know, you just wonder. For the first time, I'm just starting to think, listening to Klopp today, if the worst was to come to the worst and this situation was to unfold in a way such as Salah, it was becoming more difficult for Salah to stay at Liverpool and to get something done. Is there a point where Salah's wages released and you can get, say, a bit of fancy football here, but Bellingham and Bowen through the door to replace what is undoubtedly the best player in the world on form at the moment, but someone who is potentially making things difficult for the club the more this goes on and the more it ticks away without some kind of deal done. It does very much seem to be a bit of an impasse at the moment. I wonder, Klopp's kind of body language and the way he spoke about it today did strike me as being slightly different to how he's handled other situations. So we will see. But just last word on it as well. I think Diaz and the fact that they got him in January, that really changes the picture of it all for me a little bit. Partly because I think Liverpool have proven again that they can look ahead and look to replace key players in the front line. I think Firmino and Mane, if you're broadly looking at Jota and Diaz as their replacements, well, that's pretty good, isn't it? So, you could be saying to Salah, well, we back ourselves to potentially replace you. And the other one is, what we've heard from Salah, and Klopp mentioned this in his presser again today, is how he wants a show of ambition from the club. And he's almost hinted that he wants that in terms of signings as well, not just ambition in terms of what they'd be looking to pay him and keep him. But Klopp said today, Salah expects this club to be ambitious. Well, what's Diaz? They went out there and did it in January to trump other clubs, to get in there ahead of Spurs and to keep things ticking towards the end of the season to make sure they're fighting on all fronts. So I think there's a lot there in terms of Diaz's signing where you could say it satisfies what Salah's seemingly asking for, and it sends a little bit of a message in terms of how Liverpool is still a very attractive destination for players and the power they can wield. So, yeah, interesting today for me. I think it was two sides digging in a little bit.
It's a game, isn't it? It's a case of who's going to blink first. Salah's not the only high-profile player out of contract in 2023, and I'm not talking about just Liverpool. I'm talking about across Europe. I did a piece on this earlier in the week, and you look at all the elite clubs. Real Madrid, Benzema's out of contract. I think Asensio's out of contract. Bayern Munich, Thomas Müller, Gnabry, Lewandowski, who we know wants to leave Bayern Munich at the end of his contract. City have got Mahrez, Sterling, and Gabriel Jesus out of contract. PSG have got Messi out of contract, having got Mbappe out of contract this summer. The market has changed. Players are waiting until the end of the contracts. They're waiting to see. They're going. It's basically a case of going to the club. You either pay me what I want, or someone else will. And these clubs can just sign players on free transfers and give them the wages they want because they don't have to pay those transfer fees. And we know there are going to be these vacancies. Like if Messi leaves PSG, Benzema leaves Real Madrid, and Lewandowski leaves Bayern Munich at the end of the contracts, those are three clubs where you could see Salah going on a free transfer. And they've got, these wages are off the bill. We don't have to pay you a transfer fee. Here's £500,000 a week or whatever he is demanding that Liverpool can't give him. And then it's just, it's going to become a merry-go-round, isn't it? X goes to one place, so then he leaves an opening and someone goes faces him. Like, out of those names are listed. Or if you lose Salah on a free transfer, do you go for Gnabry on a free transfer if he doesn't sign a new deal at Bayern? It can work like that, and this is how the market seems to be at the moment. But then all it would take is one player to agree something, and that closes one door, and then that sets a going rate. Oh, this player is now on this wage at this club. then maybe that'll have these knock-on effects for the rest of the clubs across Europe, and players will look to stay put. But because of the pandemic and clubs can't afford to buy players out of contracts, they can't afford these big transfer fees. Players know if they sign these deals, they are stuck at these clubs until the end of it. It has changed the market, similar to how the Neymar deal when he went to PSG changed the market completely. Like if that hadn't happened, Liverpool wouldn't have got 142 million for Coutinho. No chance. That changed what the clubs were paying, and this has now changed the market again. And we're going to see the most high-profile case of that this summer when Mbappe presumably goes on a free transfer to Real Madrid. Pogba could go on a free transfer from United. Dybala could go on a free transfer for Juventus. It isn't just a Liverpool problem. It is all across Europe at the moment. And then when you've got these comments from Klopp, he's got to toe the club line. He knows what the club are wanting to do, and he knows what Salah wants, and he's stuck in the middle. He's just got to focus on getting the results on the pitch and getting the best out of Salah on the pitch. And they're both going to have the best interests at heart. The agent's obviously going to have his client's best interest and his own back pocket's interest at heart. So he's going to split the divide like this by making those comments, because you can just see, looking at the comments in response to him, fans are either Team Salah or the Team Club, aren't they? They're either going, if he's going to be like this and the agent's going to be like this, get rid of him. We don't want someone who's bigger than the club. Or they're, we can't afford to lose him. We have to pay him whatever he's worth. We've seen a few agents make enemies of Liverpool fans in the past, whether it's a representation of Raheem Sterling or Bobby Duncan. If Salah's agent's not careful, he could be the next one. But at the same time, he won't care at all. He's going to get his pay packet whether Salah signs a new deal at Liverpool or if he joins one of these top clubs in Europe. It's certainly intriguing to watch. And normally you'd be nervous when you get into the last 12 months of a contract. But as I said, the market has changed. This is unprecedented times. And that's why it's a bit uncertain. It's a game of cat and mouse, isn't it? Waiting to see who blinks first and whether Salah does stay put or if he is lured away by one of these big guns elsewhere.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of a trend, doesn't it, that free transfer thing? There's 2 or 3 Chelsea players as well in a similar sort of situation. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen at all with them moving forwards over the next few months, Tom. But in terms of sort of the agent and taking to Twitter, we've seen him do it a fair few times in terms of these kind of cryptic tweets. But to me, it just doesn't strike me as being particularly helpful. If he's going into negotiations with the club, I mean, it doesn't even appear that professional to me. I mean, what are your sort of thoughts on the kind of reaction from his agent? Is that helpful, or is he just making it a little bit more difficult?
Well, it's not helpful to Salah probably. Obviously, I think most people would agree about Salah. The thing about him is, at Liverpool, how professional he is, how committed he is to, being a footballer. Whereas, you might see incidents of players, getting into trouble off the pitch or whatever it may be. Salah is, the last person you'd sort of associate with that kind of thing. Just never injured, always performing to a high level, just dedicates himself. The physical condition he's in as well as a player, it just shows his commitment as well. So, to have that, and then you've got this side of it with his agent, it kind of reflects badly on Salah in a way, although it's not directly his fault. You kind of associate him being linked to Salah. So then that becomes a problem for him. I don't know whether Salah, what his view would be on it. I suppose that's out of his control, what his agent posts, but I can't imagine he would be too pleased about his agent posting things like that, because, it doesn't really help anyone. I mean, I don't know what the agent's hoping to get out of it. I don't know if he suddenly thinks that, Liverpool are going to reduce their demands because he's posting things like that. I highly doubt that would be the case with it. So, I just think it really reflects more badly on the agent himself, and it's a bit of a strange one, really. But I would be interested to see what happens next with it, because to come out with things like that, it just suggests that maybe it's not going as well as everyone thinks it is, and I know who knows what will happen, but it is a bit strange to be seeing that, because you don't often, we hear things about Raiola and he'll do interviews about his players, but that's sort of done in a different way to this. It just feels a bit childish the way he's going about it. So, I can't imagine Liverpool would be too pleased about it either, to be honest.
Yeah, it feels like a crucial few months, doesn't it? I think that the last thing we all want is to have to go into the next transfer window with Salah having 12 months left and have all of those kind of discussions. So hopefully it can be resolved. But as you say, it does feel a little bit of a way off that being the case just yet. I think we'll move on now to sort of picking our teams for Brighton. I was going to mention the injuries separately, but we might as well just throw them into that section. There's a bit of an update from Jurgen Klopp in his press conference, and I'm sure we will go through those sort of bits just now. We'll start with Alisson in goal. Theo, I'll come to you first. That the back four could be potentially one or two changes in there.
Yeah, it's confusing, isn't it? I'll start by saying one player missed the game in midweek. We were told that Klopp would address it, but no one asked him the question, so he didn't address it. Then the same player missed training yesterday, along with two other players. And then Klopp said there were no new injuries today, but he hinted at a COVID outbreak. So I will let everyone make their own minds up about which players that could be referring to, judging on what's happened this week. But then it could just be, oh, everyone's fine, they'll play tomorrow. Maybe if there are pictures emerge from training or a video from training later, we'll see, and there'll be a further update from the club. But it is all very cryptic. He was quite cagey and keeping his cards close to his chest. Like you'll say, Alisson's probably going to be in goal. Trent and Robertson are probably going to be the fullbacks. And it's just then, well, who's at centre-back? Like, it could be a case of everyone's fine and then you'd go Van Dijk and Matip. Or it could be a case of players have COVID and you might have to put Gomez in there. Let's be positive. Let's assume everyone's okay. And let's go Van Dijk and Matip. But we'll find out more in the next few hours, well, before 12:30 tomorrow.
Sean, which four are you going to go for? I mean, for me, this feels like a game that you could throw Joe Gomez in and not be that worried, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as Theo says, the picture is a little bit unclear, but if there's any doubt around anyone, and especially if, saving them this weekend would mean that they'd have a good chance for Arsenal in midweek, then you've got to do that, haven't you? So, yeah, Gomez and Matip, we were looking before in the office. They have played together this season. I think Preston away in the Cup was at least one occasion where they started together. It's a very capable duo, isn't it? I'd have no problems there if that was the two. And then, yeah, I think Trent and Robertson undoubtedly will start this one, and they can do both the league ones, can't they? And then you can bring Tsimikas, perhaps Milner in at fullback next weekend for the FA Cup.
Yeah, no Virgil van Dijk or Ibrahim Konate in the training pictures on Thursday, Tom. But assuming that all four centre-backs are fit, would you go with the first choice too? Or obviously there is that big game away at Arsenal to come on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, Konate's played quite well when he's been playing recently. So, he may be tempted to potentially, try and maintain that form and play him alongside Van Dijk potentially. But I think he probably would go with Matip ahead of him But, I mean, I don't think there would be too many complaints sort of either way if he went with Konate over Matip, just because of how well he played, particularly against West Ham. So, yeah, I mean, I'd go with Matip and Van Dijk. But, yeah, like I said, I think Konate would be a good option as well if he is fit.
Yes, we shall see. Let's move on to the midfield then. Thiago was another player that missed training on Thursday, Theo, so that could come into the equation. I mean, I'm actually going to take Fabinho out for this one and save him for the Arsenal game. I think it might be Jordan Henderson as a 6, maybe a chance for Harvey Elliott potentially to come in, but which three are you going to go for?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've done for our selections for the written article tomorrow. I've put Henderson in as the number 6 with Harvey Elliott at the right side, and I think I went Oxlade-Chamberlain on the left. I know he's not had the best time when he's been playing recently, but with Liverpool looking a little bit leggy, you do need to rotate, and we know how demanding it is when you're in that Liverpool midfield. If there are any doubts over Thiago when he's just back from injury, you don't want to risk him, not at all. Like, he's going to be so important for us this season, so save him for those bigger games. And then there was a doubt about Naby Keita, was it last week or against Inter, where Klopp hinted he had an injury and then he actually was in the squad anyway, played anyway. So there are options there, but it does seem like a good time to rotate and then go a bit stronger against Arsenal and then rotate again for the FA Cup. So I'll go along with what you said there.
Yeah, my third man actually was Naby Keita, but it'd be interesting to see which of those players do come in. Sean, which three are you going to go for?
Difficult this. I see where you're both coming from. I think it would be good if there was potential to rotate the 6s and give Henderson one and Fabinho the other, but I'm not sure it's quite that much of a banker tomorrow, really. And especially if we are talking about the centre-halves potentially chopping and changing and Gomez coming in alongside Matip, albeit, you'd have confidence in that partnership. It's not it's not one we've seen a hell of a lot this season. And, you know, Gomez is coming in slightly cold, isn't he, if he is starting. So I think you've got to look to have Fabinho in probably both these games, and then maybe go with Henderson as the 6 in the FA Cup. So, yeah, I'd go Fabinho, Henderson and Naby Keita.
Tom, are you team Fabinho or team Jordan Henderson?
I was thinking about both, and I don't think...
Think about your Swiss mentions, mate. Think about your Swiss mentions.
I think I'd go with Henderson. Keita. I don't think Thiago maybe might not play him. Just obviously had that sort of scare. It wasn't necessarily an injury, but I don't know if he'd, you know, want to risk playing him in this game. Probably prefer the Arsenal game for Thiago. I don't even know. He may go with Jones. You know, he played well against Inter Milan when he started, so maybe he'll give him another chance in midfield alongside Henderson. But I would probably go with Fabinho and Henderson and Keita. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised maybe if he went with Jones instead of Keita.
Yeah, still plenty of options, isn't there, Theo? We'll move into the forward line then. Again, plenty of options. Roberto Firmino now back from injury. Jurgen Klopp confirmed that he could be involved tomorrow. Are you going to play him or are you going to have him on the bench?
So plenty of options, didn't we? Pretty much all pick every one of the midfielders apart from Thiago there. Making it confusing for our video editors watching this, choosing the strongest 11 for tomorrow. I wouldn't risk Firmino from the start. He's been out for a while, muscle injury. They weren't very specific about what sort of muscle injury it was, I don't think. But it's a case of when you've got the depth, you don't need to risk players. You don't need to rush them back and start them when you know they're not going to be 100%. So you keep him in reserve. I've already made this point about Jota. He still doesn't look right. So I'm still leaning towards keeping him in reserve, gradually letting him get back up to speed. I'm thinking Mane through the middle again with Diaz and Salah. But then it's also a sort of game where I wouldn't be against Minamino coming in, actually, because he did well against Norwich in the Cup a couple of weeks ago. It's the sort of game that suits him, whether that was through the middle or out on the left. But yeah, I think it will be more stronger than that. I think it will be Diaz, Mane, Salah. But Minamino is an option, which is good because Liverpool do need these options.
Yeah, I'm going for the same 3, actually. I fancy Diogo Jota to have a rest and then score a couple against Arsenal, as he has done already this season on Wednesday. Sean, which 3 are you going to go for?
Yeah, I think I would put Firmino back in from the start and just, say, give us an hour. Man. Well, he's been around in training this week, hasn't he? I think he was pictured in training before the Champions League game, wasn't he? Albeit he didn't feature. So, that's a few sessions. And he's going to have to be thrown back in at some point. So, when do you do it? I mean, I do get the argument that the international break's coming up, and
he loves scoring against Arsenal as well. Just putting that out there. Bobby does love an Arsenal goal.
True, but so does Sadio. See, this is I would go with Firmino and say, give us an energetic hour. Yeah, they all do. To be fair, we'll be fine midweek, hopefully. But either Firmino in the middle, I would play Diaz on the left and Salah on the right, and holding back Mane and Jota for Arsenal.
Tom, which configuration are you going for?
I think I'll probably go with Theo's 3 on this one. I'll probably go with Diaz, Salah and Mane, I think, on this occasion. And then maybe bring on Jota and Firmino later on in the game if you need a goal.
Yeah, not bad options to have, certainly. Let's go for our match predictions then. I think I'm going to go for a 2-0 Liverpool win. Fancy a couple of goals and maybe a clean sheet as well for Liverpool. I might change my mind if there is 1 or 2 changes in that defence. Who knows? We shall find out very soon. Theo, score prediction from yourself.
It's very boring from you, Matt. Very safe. Just going for 2-0. It should go 2, isn't it?
I say 2-0 every single podcast, don't I? When was the last time I didn't say 2-0?
I think if it's 2-0, you'll be happy that Liverpool will become the second ever team to reach 2,000 Premier League goals. So I'm sure they'll be very happy with that. But we don't have a clue what centre-backs are available. So let's go 3-1. They still get the record, but no clean sheet this week. So basically, I've mocked you for your scoreline and done a nice tweak on it. It's the same thing.
Yeah, same goal difference. We'll take it. Any win. A win's a win. Sean?
I'm fully team Addison here, 2-0, the most dangerous lead in football, and then see if they can hold on to it this time, unlike the last home game. But yeah, as well with the caveat of let's see who's at the back. But yeah, hopefully a fairly comfortable one.
Yeah, it would be nice to have just a routine win, 3 points, a clean sheet. I think that would tick a good few boxes for Liverpool. Tom, how do you reckon it might play out?
I probably would have normally gone for about 2 or 3-0, but just because they haven't been scoring many recently, I might go for 1-0 just to get might just nick this one, I think.
I thought you were going to go the other way there and say they're due a few, so 5-0.
Nah, I think it will be closer than people think. I'll go 1-0.
Yeah, well, as long as they win, that will do us, I think. I think that will just about do us for this podcast as well. Plenty more stuff to come across the usual channels before and after the game, of course. But from myself, Matt Addison, from Sean Bradbury, Theo Squires and Tom Cavilla, it's goodbye for now.